The darkness of space had always been a canvas of endless silence, a vast stage where civilizations rose and fell, leaving whispers of their existence scattered like stardust. Yet, for centuries, humanity had been little more than a shadow to the galaxy of fledgling species barely noticed beyond its tiny blue cradle. That perception was about to shatter. Something was stirring in the void, something that would make even the most ancient and powerful races tremble. Humanity's fleet, long underestimated, was no longer content to hide behind the veil of obscurity. It began with whispers across star systems, fleets seen at the edge of contested space, ships moving with a precision and coordination that defied every expectation. Reports of human ingenuity spread like wildfire, painting a picture of a species that refused to bow, a species that had mastered the impossible. But the galaxy, confident in its own supremacy, still underestimated them. The colossal empires that had ruled unchallenged for millennia laughed at the audacity of humanity. They did not see the fire smoldering behind human eyes, the relentless drive to survive, adapt, and dominate when the stakes demanded it. In the heart of this unfolding storm stood the architects of humanity's rise, not leaders seeking fame, not generals craving conquest, but engineers, thinkers, and pilots who had turned Earth's limited resources into a fleet capable of defying expectation. Ships born from ingenuity glimmered with humanity's signature resilience. Every hull bore the mark of improvisation, every weapon a testament to the unyielding will of its crew. This was not just a fleet. It was a declaration, a statement that the galaxy's age-old hierarchy was about to face a challenge it had never anticipated. Even the most advanced civilizations paused, watching transmissions flicker across the void. Ships that had once been symbols of ultimate power now felt fragile compared to humanity's daring tactics. Alien commanders exchanged uneasy glances, their centuries of dominance suddenly feeling uncertain. And yet, humanity's rise was more than a test of firepower. It was a reflection of their spirit, their hunger to endure against impossible odds, and their willingness to stare into the abyss and reshape it in their image. The tension reached every corner of known space. A single fleet, they thought, but it moved with the force of a hurricane. Sensors picked up formations that seemed impossible, weapons that defied conventional design, strategies that mocked centuries of doctrine. Humanity did not fight like the galaxy expected. They adapted, outsmarted, and thrived where others would crumble. Reports of encounters spread quickly, each one more shocking than the last. Alien armadas faltering under tactics they had never imagined, their confidence eroding as humans pressed forward with unrelenting tenacity. Among the stars, stories began to circulate, stories of fear, yes, but also of curiosity. Why had a species that seemed so fragile for so long suddenly risen to challenge the known powers? And what did it mean for the balance of the galaxy? Every encounter, every skirmish revealed a new layer of humanity's ambition and courage. There was no surrender, no hesitation, only the sharp, unyielding force of a civilization refusing to remain in the shadows any longer. And now, on the edge of what many considered the final frontier, humanity's fleet gathered. Its ships gleamed under distant suns, engines humming with the collective heartbeat of a species ready to declare its presence. Across the galaxy, commanders who had once sneered at human potential now faced the chilling truth. The creatures they dismissed were no longer a footnote in history, they were a reckoning. As silence fell across the void, one question burned brighter than any star. Would the galaxy finally understand the fear that humanity carried in its wake? Would it recognize that for the first time, a species that had once cowered beneath the gaze of others could now hold that gaze in return, unwavering, unstoppable, and unafraid? The stage was set, the players in position, and the first moves of this galactic game were about to be made. Somewhere in the distance, the galaxy waited, unaware of the storm hurtling toward it, a storm forged from Earth's relentless spirit and unbroken will. And as the first echoes of humanity's challenge reached the farthest corners of known space, one thing became clear: the galaxy would never see the universe in the same way again. The galaxy had grown complacent. For countless generations, civilizations had measured strength in fleets, weapons, and the size of their dominion, and humanity had been dismissed as a minor anomaly, a world too small, too chaotic, too inexperienced to matter. Yet beneath that underestimated exterior, humans had been observing, learning, and preparing. Earth's scattered colonies had spent decades in secret research, honing technology that could rival, and in some ways surpass, what the most ancient empires claimed as their own. Every delay, every misstep, every failure on humanity's part had been a lesson, a stepping stone toward this very moment. The story of humanity's fleet was not one of sudden genius. It was the product of perseverance against impossible odds. Earth had survived plagues, wars, and environmental collapse, and through every catastrophe, humans had adapted. Engineers on distant moons had experimented with propulsion systems that bent conventional physics. Scientists had discovered ways to combine energy sources previously thought incompatible, and pilots had learned to trust intuition as much as instruments. The result was a fleet unlike any the galaxy had seen, agile, relentless, and unpredictable. In the cold expanse of space, the ships moved as if guided by a single mind. Every maneuver was precise yet adaptive. Squadrons split and reformed in patterns that confounded enemy scanners, and weapons that seemed modest on paper struck with devastating effectiveness when deployed with human timing and ingenuity. The alien races that monitored them were baffled. Their intelligence reports described actions that should have been impossible, strategies that ignored centuries of military theory. The fear that began as curiosity had quietly begun to grow into unease, and unease was the first whisper of panic. But behind the machinery and tactics, there were the humans themselves. Not faceless soldiers or abstract forces, but men and women who had trained in harsh conditions, who had grown up hearing stories of survival and resilience. They remembered a world where resources were scarce, where their species had been confined to a single pale blue planet, and they carried that memory into the void. Every mission, every engagement was not just a battle for territory or survival, it was a statement of identity. Humans did not fight for glory. They fought because they had no choice but to assert themselves, because the galaxy's indifference had forced them to rise or vanish. Command centers aboard the flagship buzzed with quiet intensity. Operators monitored hundreds of simultaneous channels, analyzing the movements of distant fleets, predicting responses, and coordinating the next step. There was no panic here, only focus, and yet, beneath that calm, there was an undercurrent of tension. Humanity was venturing into unknown territory, challenging powers that had dominated space for millennia, and every decision carried consequences that could ripple across the stars. Meanwhile, the galaxy watched. Messages and warnings were transmitted from one empire to another, each one brimming with disbelief. A single species cannot rise this quickly, one admiral argued. There must be assistance, something hidden behind them, said another. Rumors spread of secret technologies, alliances with unknown entities, even mysterious forces that had somehow empowered humanity. None of these theories held weight, but the uncertainty alone was enough to unsettle even the most confident commanders. Humans were no longer just a curiosity, they were a threat whose limits could not be measured. Among the fleet, stories were whispered about the origin of this rise. Tales of scientists who had devoted their lives to creating the engines of human advancement, of crews who had survived impossible encounters and returned with knowledge that reshaped tactics, of the civilians who had refused to surrender their world and instead fueled innovation. Each story became a thread in a tapestry that defined the fleet not only as a military force, but as the embodiment of a species unwilling to submit. And yet, even as humanity prepared to assert its presence, there were questions that remained unanswered. How far would this rise take them? Would the galaxy truly understand the force now being unleashed? Or would it provoke a response so fierce that survival itself hung in the balance? In the shadows between stars, unknown observers stirred. Civilizations that had not yet revealed themselves but had always watched from the fringes, and now they were paying attention. The balance of power was shifting, and no one knew where it might settle or if it would ever settle at all. As the flagship adjusted course toward contested space, the crew felt the weight of what they were about to do. Every maneuver, every strategy, every decision carried echoes far beyond their own understanding. The galaxy in all its vastness had never seen a species rise like this. Fear had begun to spread in quiet ripples, and tension hung like a storm cloud on the horizon. Humanity was no longer a footnote in the chronicles of space, it was a force, a question mark, a shadow moving toward the heart of every empire. And still, the fleet pressed forward. Engines flared against the void, weapons systems hummed with anticipation, and the humans at the helm prepared to face a universe that had ignored them for too long. Somewhere out there, the galaxy waited, unaware that the calm of its dominion was about to be shattered by a species that had learned to endure, to adapt, and to strike with a precision born of unyielding determination. The tension thickened with every passing light year, and the first encounter that would test everything had yet to come. The fleet moved deeper into the uncharted sector, where light years of emptiness had been claimed by ancient empires as their own. Sensors flickered across the control panels, scanning for threats that could strike without warning, and reports came in from scouts who had pushed beyond the familiar borders. Each transmission carried more questions than answers, ships disappearing, energy signatures that didn't match any known technology, fleets moving in patterns that seemed almost aware. The humans had expected resistance, but they had not anticipated the subtle cunning of forces that had watched the galaxy for eons. On board the flagship, the command crew gathered around tactical displays, tracking every blip with careful attention. They knew the stories' warnings from intelligence channels about civilizations whose fleets could engulf planets, whose technology bent physics in ways humans had only begun to understand. Yet there was no fear in their eyes, only concentration. They studied patterns, hypothesized enemy moves, and tested contingencies against every possible scenario. Even with all their preparation, the unknown hung over them like a storm ready to strike. Not all of the humans were stationed on the main ships. Outlying squads had been dispatched to investigate anomalies, salvage ancient relics, and gather intelligence. One of these teams had discovered a derelict vessel, massive yet oddly shaped, unlike anything humanity had cataloged. The scans revealed remnants of a civilization so advanced it had vanished without trace. The team debated whether this ship was a warning or an invitation, its presence in this region a puzzle that no one could yet solve. Even as curiosity drew them closer, the crew couldn't ignore the creeping unease, the sense that someone or something had been watching them long before they arrived. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the news of humanity's advance spread like wildfire. Commanders of the established empires convened, arguing strategies, debating whether to strike preemptively and questioning their own intelligence. Subplots of intrigue and rivalry emerged as rival factions questioned loyalties, suspected betrayal, and weighed the risk of inaction. Some feared that acting too late could allow humanity to consolidate power, while others argued that overreaction might provoke the very chaos they wished to avoid. The galaxy was fracturing in uncertainty, and the humans were the unseen catalyst driving the storm. Back within the fleet, interpersonal dynamics added tension to the mission. The pilots of advanced fighters trained under intense conditions, but stress weighed heavily on some. Disagreements over tactics arose, tempered by the knowledge that any mistake could be fatal. Engineers argued over modifications, debates over resource allocation becoming fierce under the pressure of imminent engagement. Yet in these conflicts there was also resilience, a recognition that their differences, their passion, and even their flaws were what made humanity unpredictable. Where other civilizations relied on hierarchy and rigid obedience, humans thrived on adaptability and improvisation. Scout reports indicated signs of alien activity ahead, subtle distortions in energy readings that hinted at an approaching force. The fleet held its formation, engines humming quietly, weapon systems primed but not yet deployed. Tension tightened with each passing moment. No one could be certain whether what they would encounter was hostile, curious, or something entirely different, an unknown variable that could turn a careful advance into a desperate retreat. The uncertainty itself became a weapon, shaping the fleet's movements, dictating decisions, and keeping everyone on edge. Elsewhere, whispers of mysterious factions began to circulate. Observers who had long remained hidden in the outskirts of the galaxy seemed to be converging on the same sector. Some watched from safe distance, studying humanity as if preparing to decide whether to intervene, ally, or destroy. Their intentions were unclear, and intelligence channels carried only fragmented reports. The tension was no longer just between humans and the empires. They were entering a larger, more complex web of power, one where every action could ripple across multiple civilizations. In the human command center, the tactical displays shifted again, highlighting unusual energy bursts in the region. Analysts debated what they meant. Could these bursts be weapons, communication, or some unknown phenomenon entirely? Each possibility carried a different implication, and no one could rule out disaster. Even as they prepared for confrontation, the human crews felt the weight of anticipation. This was not merely a battle of fleets, it was a confrontation with the unknown, a test of humanity's ingenuity against the galaxy's hidden depths. Among the crew, conversations turned to what they had left behind the planets, colonies and families that gave them purpose. Every pilot and engineer understood that they were carrying more than technology into the void. They carried the history of a species, the memory of survival, and the hope that humanity could claim its place among the stars. Yet that hope was fragile, constantly tested by the invisible forces pressing from all sides. The tension was suffocating, but it fueled the determination that had brought them this far. And as the fleet approached the next jump point, a transmission arrived from an unknown source. The message was brief, cryptic, and unlike anything humanity had encountered. You are seen. But what you do next will echo beyond your understanding. Silence followed. The words were not a threat, yet they carried a weight heavier than any weapon. Across the fleet, the human crews felt it, the undeniable sense that they were no longer just participants in galactic events. They were at the center of a story far larger than themselves, a story whose outcome remained entirely unknown. The stage was set. Every angle of the galaxy had eyes on humanity now, and the pressure intensified with every passing moment. The fleet advanced, tension mounting, uncertainty thickening, and the first true encounter with what waited in the void drawing closer. Every decision mattered, every miscalculation could be fatal, and the universe seemed to hold its breath as the humans pressed forward into the unknown. The fleet moved cautiously, engines barely whispering against the darkness as the jump point loomed ahead. Space stretched like an empty canvas, but the emptiness was deceptive. Every blip on the sensors, every subtle fluctuation in energy hinted at forces lying in wait, unseen yet palpable. The unknown had become a living presence, pressing against the humans as if the void itself were testing their resolve. Commanders exchanged glances that betrayed both determination and the faintest shadow of doubt, aware that what lay ahead could change the balance of the galaxy forever. Scout ships reported movement small, almost imperceptible at first, then growing into distinct formations. Alien vessels emerged from the shadows, their designs unlike anything catalogued by human intelligence. Sleek, angular shapes with energy signatures that seemed to shift and phase made the fleet hesitate for a heartbeat. Even with all their experience, the humans recognized the moment for what it was, first contact, but on terms they could not fully predict. The galaxy's gaze had found them, and humanity was about to be tested in ways no one had imagined. Tension spread through the fleet like an electric current. Pilots tightened grips on their controls, engineers double-checked every system, and command crews ran simulations in rapid cycles, seeking patterns that might offer an edge. The unknown ships did not respond immediately, they lingered on the periphery, observing. It was a silent standoff, a moment suspended between fear and determination. The humans had trained for combat, but nothing in their preparation had fully captured the psychological weight of being watched by a civilization, or multiple civilizations, whose intentions remained a mystery. In the lower decks, crews whispered about the legends of the sector, stories of fleets swallowed whole, of civilizations erased in a single engagement. Some dismissed them as myths, but in the faces around them there was a shared understanding that the stakes were enormous. Every human aboard these ships carried not just weapons and technology. But the hope of their species and the responsibility of survival weighed heavier than any armor or shield could contain. Amid the suspense, subplots emerged within the fleet itself. A group of engineers discovered anomalies in the alien energy signatures pulses that might be exploited if understood. Another squad of pilots prepared a risky reconnaissance mission, hoping to gather crucial information before committing the fleet fully. Arguments flared briefly over strategy, tempered by the knowledge that hesitation could cost lives, but beneath the tension, an unspoken unity prevailed. Humans relied on each other in ways no automated system could replicate. Their unpredictability, their courage, and their improvisation had become their greatest weapons. The alien vessels began to advance, slowly at first, testing humanity's reactions. Each movement was calculated as if they were learning from the humans in real time. Sensors picked up the faint outlines of larger ships lurking behind the front line, war machines capable of devastating planetary targets. The humans knew this was more than a skirmish. This was a test of will and cunning, a challenge that could spiral into a full-scale conflict. Every heartbeat aboard the flagship matched the rhythm of uncertainty, every crew member aware that one misstep could escalate the encounter into catastrophe. Suddenly, communication channels lit up with intercepted transmissions messages in unknown codes, patterns that hinted at coordination, intelligence networks far more complex than humanity had expected. Analysts worked furiously to decode them, the tension mounting with each fragment that revealed the enemy's understanding of human tactics. It was unsettling and exhilarating all at once. The humans had prepared for battle, but they had not anticipated the depth of scrutiny they were under. Every choice they made would be watched, every maneuver evaluated, and the enemy would adapt faster than any human mind could fully anticipate. In the midst of this, the first sign of danger arrived. A burst of energy detonated in the distance, closer than anticipated. The shockwave rippled across sensors, setting off alarms, and for the first time, fear became tangible aboard the fleet. Pilots and engineers reacted instantly, coordinating defenses, maneuvering vessels, and deploying countermeasures. The calm that had persisted through months of preparation fractured, replaced by the raw intensity of imminent conflict. Humans were tested not by distance or firepower alone, but by the unrelenting pressure of facing an unknown adversary that matched and challenged their ingenuity at every turn. The flagship's command crew locked eyes with one another, understanding the unspoken truth. The confrontation they had anticipated was here, and the next moments would define not just the battle, but the place of humanity in the galaxy. Every sensor reading, every tactical choice, and every heartbeat carried the weight of survival. The enemy's ships had formed a line that stretched across the void, and from the shadows other vessels began to emerge, revealing scale and power that even the humans had underestimated. As the first exchange seemed inevitable, whispers of strategy and speculation filled the command center. Which move would trigger full engagement? Could humanity leverage its unpredictability to create an opening? Or had the humans underestimated the scope of what they faced? Outside, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. Engines flared, weapon systems charged, and the tension built to a crescendo. The fleet and the unknown armada hovered on the edge of a storm, poised for the clash that would determine who would survive and who would be remembered only as a lesson. And then, just as the fleet reached the edge of engagement, the alien vessels shifted in unison, a coordinated movement that defied prediction. The humans felt it immediately. They were no longer just advancing. They were entering the teeth of the unknown, into a confrontation that could consume all. Every crew member knew that the climax of this encounter was imminent, that the first shots or the first maneuvers would ignite a chain reaction whose consequences no one could yet foresee. The galaxy held its breath, and humanity stood at the brink, ready to face the storm they had provoked. Just as the fleet braced for the first engagement, a sudden anomaly rippled through space ahead of them. The sensors went wild, energy readings fluctuated wildly, systems flickered, and a strange distortion appeared in the void, bending light and shadow in impossible ways. For a moment, it seemed as if the very fabric of space itself had been manipulated. The crew exchanged tense glances, their trained instincts warning that this was no ordinary attack or maneuver. Something had changed. something beyond their calculations, and the calm before battle vanished in an instant. Reports came in from the forward scouts. Ships that had been monitoring the alien armada began vanishing, disappearing without a trace, leaving only faint residual energy behind. Communications broke in fragmented bursts, as if the void itself was swallowing their transmissions. The human commanders realized immediately that this was not a trap in the traditional sense, but a phenomenon or weapon so unfamiliar that predicting its effect was nearly impossible. Hearts raced, and the tension that had already been taut now snapped tighter. Humanity had faced the unknown before, but never on this scale. Within the flagship, the tactical displays showed the enemy vessels advancing, yet simultaneously being distorted by the same anomaly. Some ships seemed to flicker out of phase, their forms stretching and warping before snapping back into position. Pilots reported sudden gravitational shifts, and engineers scrambled to stabilize the fleet. Every maneuver required split-second precision, and yet the rules of space, the constants humans had relied on for decades, no longer applied. Every action carried new risk, and the sense of vulnerability was immediate and suffocating. Whispers spread among the crew about the implications. Had this alien force discovered a weapon of mass-scale disruption? Was the anomaly a natural phenomenon they had stumbled upon, or an engineered trap designed to test and intimidate humanity? No one had answers, and that uncertainty became a weapon in itself. Fear and anticipation coiled in every corridor, every command center, and every cockpit. The humans had prepared for combat, for strategy, for ingenuity, but they had not prepared for reality bending around them in ways that defied understanding. Amid the chaos, a new subplot emerged. One of the scout vessels detected movement not just from the enemy fleet, but from an entirely separate entity lurking far beyond the front lines. The readings were faint, intermittent, so subtle that at first it could have been a sensor glitch. But as the signals grew stronger, analysts realized that a third force had entered the theater, unknown and unaccounted for. Its energy signatures were unlike anything cataloged, neither human nor any recognized alien technology. The implication was staggering. Humanity was not just facing the armada they had anticipated, but a hidden presence whose intentions were entirely unknowable. The command crew debated rapidly. Some argued for full engagement with the alien armada first, fearing that hesitation could allow the hidden force to exploit weaknesses. Others urged caution, recognizing that any attack could draw the mysterious third party into open action, potentially overwhelming them on multiple fronts. The tension was electric, and every second that passed intensified the stakes. Human ingenuity, usually their greatest advantage, now competed against the unpredictable and the unknowable. On the fighter decks, pilots felt the anomaly firsthand. Ships jittered in sudden bursts, engines strained against invisible forces, and targeting systems glitched as if reality itself was bending around the battlefield. Every maneuver demanded instinct, courage, and a willingness to risk the impossible. The crews whispered of a ghost in space, a force that could erase a vessel before they even had time to respond. The psychological pressure was as lethal as any weapon, and even the most experienced pilots felt a creeping doubt, a recognition that they were confronting forces beyond human comprehension. Meanwhile, in the rear of the fleet, engineers raced against time to adapt human technology to the new conditions. Shields were recalibrated, propulsion systems adjusted for gravitational distortions, and weapons tested against unstable conditions. Every solution introduced new challenges. Each adaptation risked overloading systems or creating unforeseen vulnerabilities. The human crews understood that survival depended not just on bravery, but on their ability to think faster and adapt in ways no algorithm or doctrine could anticipate. The alien armada, for its part, seemed almost to anticipate humanity's adjustments. Ships shifted formation as the humans adapted, forcing repeated recalibrations. The fleet realized that the aliens were not just aggressive, they were intelligent in ways that pushed humans to their limits, exploiting every opening, every hesitation. The sense of being observed, analyzed, and countered by an enemy that could think faster than humans had ever encountered added another layer of pressure. Then, as the fleet held its position near the anomaly, the unknown third force made its first visible move. A wave of energy surged across space, rippling toward both fleets. It was not an attack in the traditional sense, but a demonstration of power so overwhelming that even seasoned commanders froze. Entire regions of the battlefield shimmered, ships wobbling as gravitational and temporal distortions surged unpredictably. Humanity was caught between two unknowns, the Armada advancing with deadly precision and a hidden power that could change the rules of engagement entirely. The humans braced, every system active, every crew member at their station. The anomaly ahead, the alien fleet, and the mysterious third presence had converged into a moment of maximum tension. Every heartbeat in the flagship echoed the uncertainty, every blip on the tactical screen representing a potential threat or an opportunity. Humanity's ingenuity, courage, and resilience were about to be tested in ways no one had ever imagined, and the stakes were higher than ever. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if this species that had once been dismissed as fragile could survive the forces now closing around it. The tension that had gripped the fleet for hours erupted into motion as the anomaly pulsed violently, stretching space around the Armada like molten glass. Ships shuddered under the strain, lights flickering across the hulls as the humans braced for impact. Pilots gritted their teeth, engines flaring in desperate bursts to counter the sudden gravitational shifts. The alien Armada surged forward as if sensing weakness, and simultaneously, the hidden third force unleashed a wave of energy that distorted reality across the battlefield. It was chaos made tangible, a moment where instinct and ingenuity became the only weapons humans could rely on. The flagship's command center roared with activity. Every sensor reading was analyzed in real time, every prediction recalculated against impossible odds. Human crews coordinated maneuvers across the fleet with a level of precision born from years of improvisation and adaptability. For a heartbeat, it felt as if the void itself was testing them, weighing humanity against forces that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. Yet, even as the pressure mounted, there was no fear in their determination, only a sharp, burning focus. Humanity had endured the impossible before, and this moment was no different. The first exchange came with a violent flare of energy. Alien vessels unleashed a barrage of weapons designed to overwhelm, but human countermeasures, recalibrated in the midst of the anomaly, absorbed and deflected the initial strikes. Pilots darted through the distortions, weaving in patterns that defied expectation, striking at gaps in the enemy formations. It was not brute force alone that turned the tide. It was unpredictability, the willingness to exploit the unknown with courage and instinct. Humanity was fighting with a rhythm no ancient doctrine could predict, and it left the Armada staggered. Then, from the hidden third force, a series of coordinated pulses struck both fleets. The energy waves were disruptive, bending the battlefield into disarray, but the humans had anticipated the unpredictability, adapting shields and recalibrating weapons even as ships were thrown off course. Every maneuver became a test of nerve, every decision a delicate balance between risk and reward. The fleet moved as a single organism, a living testament to the ingenuity and resilience that had brought humanity to this moment. Amid the chaos, a breakthrough came. One of the forward scouts identified a critical flaw in the alien Armada's formation and energy feedback loop in the central command ships that could be exploited. Signals were transmitted instantly, and human squadrons adjusted their approach, targeting the weak points with precision. Explosions rippled across the enemy fleet, shattering key vessels and throwing the remainder into confusion. The Armada, long feared as invincible, faltered under the unrelenting and unconventional tactics of humanity. The anomaly itself, unstable and unpredictable, began to collapse inward, the energy pulses feeding off the surrounding distortion. Pilots maneuvered carefully, avoiding the most dangerous zones while luring enemy vessels into the collapsing field. In a daring and risky operation, humans used the anomaly itself as a weapon redirecting energy surges to disable enemy ships without risking themselves. The balance of the battle shifted, tension replaced with controlled aggression, and for the first time, the humans sensed that victory was within reach. Yet, even as the Armada faltered, the hidden third force made its decisive move. Massive vessels materialized from the distortion, revealing not alien adversaries but ancient guardians of the sector, civilizations long thought extinct. Their arrival was not hostile, but it carried a message encoded in waves of energy that humans barely comprehended. Your rise has been observed. The galaxy's order must be preserved, but potential cannot be denied. The humans paused, realizing that the anomaly, the armada, and the hidden force were part of a larger test, a gauntlet meant to measure the worth of any species daring to rise. In that tense silence, humanity acted with instinct and clarity. Pilots adjusted formations, engineers stabilized energy fields, and the flagship's command coordinated a final, daring push. Alien vessels already weakened by the human assault were drawn into the collapsing anomaly, unable to escape, while human ships navigated the field with precision. One by one, the Armada's strongest ships were neutralized, their threat removed without total annihilation. The battle ended not with overwhelming destruction, but with strategic brilliance, a statement that humanity had arrived, not as conquerors, but as survivors, thinkers, and innovators. As the fleet regrouped, the galaxy watched in awe. The Armada was broken, the anomaly collapsed safely, and the hidden guardians observed without interference. Humanity had proven that courage, ingenuity, and adaptability could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. The fleet floated in the void, battered but unbowed, and for a moment silence stretched across the stars. The humans had faced what no one thought possible and emerged alive, leaving a ripple of fear, respect, and curiosity throughout the galaxy. But the final twist came as transmissions from the Guardians reached the flagship. The anomaly was not a natural phenomenon, it had been engineered as a seed. A warning followed. This is only the beginning. Others watch, others wait. Your rise will draw attention beyond this sector. Humanity realized that the test had been a prelude, and the galaxy, vast as it was, held secrets far deeper and more dangerous than they had yet encountered. The calm of victory carried a shadow of uncertainty, a realization that the struggle for survival, for recognition, and for dominance had only just begun. The fleet, victorious yet wary, adjusted course into the unknown. The battle had been won, but the war for humanity's place among the stars and the mysteries awaiting in the deeper void was only beginning. And as the stars stretched endlessly ahead, the humans understood one undeniable truth. They had awakened the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The fleet moved through the void in the aftermath of the battle, engines steady, shields humming with residual energy, and the humans aboard felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Silence stretched across the ships, broken only by the occasional report from pilots and engineers checking systems and repairing minor damage. The galaxy had tested them, and they had passed, but the sense of victory was tempered by the knowledge that this was only the beginning. Humanity had proven itself, but the cosmos was vast and its challenges were far from over. Across the flagship, crew members reflected on what they had endured. Engineers shared quiet laughter over improbable fixes that had kept ships operational. Pilots recounted moments of instinctive brilliance that had saved lives, and command crews analyzed every detail to ensure lessons were learned. There was pride, yes, but also humility. Humans had faced forces beyond comprehension, yet they had survived not through brute strength alone, but through cooperation, adaptability, and sheer determination. It was a testament to the resilience that defined their species, a resilience that the galaxy could no longer ignore. The alien armada, now in disarray, began to retreat under the careful observation of the hidden guardians. Humans had made it clear that aggression came with consequences, yet the engagement had been measured, avoiding unnecessary annihilation. The message was unmistakable. Humanity was a species to be reckoned with, capable of holding its own among the most advanced civilizations. The galaxy had watched, and for the first time, it recognized that humanity was not merely a fledgling species. They were a force, clever, resourceful, and unafraid to challenge the established order. Subplots that had been quietly unfolding throughout the campaign found resolution. The engineers who had discovered the anomaly's weaknesses had proven their theories, their innovations pivotal to the fleet's success. The forward scout teams who had braved the strange distortions and unknown forces returned with invaluable intelligence, their bravery a testament to human courage. Even minor disputes among crew members over strategy and tactics had dissolved, replaced by respect born of shared danger and shared triumph. Humanity had not just survived the test. It had grown stronger, both in technology and in spirit. The Guardians, enigmatic and imposing, lingered at the edges of the sector, observing without interference. Their presence was a reminder that the galaxy held mysteries far deeper than any single civilization could comprehend. They had provided neither aid nor punishment, only observation and subtle guidance. Humans understood, in that silent exchange, that they had earned recognition not merely as survivors, but as participants in a galaxy larger and older than themselves. Their ingenuity, courage, and persistence had been acknowledged, and in that acknowledgment lay the first real proof that humanity's place among the stars was no longer hypothetical. Even as the fleet regrouped and repaired, communication channels opened with other civilizations that had previously dismissed humanity. Diplomatic envoys, hesitant but curious, began tentative contact. Some sought alliances, others offered cautious trade or technology exchanges, but all recognized the new reality: humanity could not be ignored. The galaxy's attention had shifted, and humans had earned the right to be heard, to negotiate and to shape the narrative of the cosmos. Despite the sense of accomplishment, human leaders reminded their crews that the victory came with responsibility. The anomaly had been a seed, a warning of the forces still watching from the depths of space. Humanity's rise would attract attention, both curious and dangerous, and preparation for what lay ahead was now as critical as celebration. The campaign had tested their ingenuity and courage, but it had also taught them humility and foresight. To survive among the stars, humans would need all three. As the flagship adjusted course toward the next frontier, reflections turned inward. Humans considered what had driven them to this point: not desire for conquest, but survival, curiosity, and an unyielding refusal to be dismissed. The fleet's journey was proof of what a species could accomplish when it embraced creativity, cooperation, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. The galaxy had watched humanity rise, but more importantly, humanity had watched itself rise, and the realization was profound. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, each one a reminder of the vast possibilities awaiting humanity. The fleet, battered but unbroken, moved forward not as a scattered group of colonies, but as a unified force capable of shaping its own destiny. The lessons of the anomaly, the alien armada, and the hidden guardians would guide them, not as constraints, but as knowledge to fuel ingenuity and strategy. Humanity had awakened the galaxy, and now it was awake itself. As the final light of the anomaly faded behind them, the humans on the flagship understood the truth that had carried them through every trial. Survival, ingenuity, and unity were their greatest strengths, and these qualities would define them among the stars. The galaxy would never see them the same way again, and humanity, for its part, would never be the same either. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, humans felt the weight of possibility rather than fear. They had risen, and the universe had finally gazed upon the species that had haunted its expectations, and humanity had endured, stronger and bolder than ever before.